everyone. This is yet another episode of Career Talks by Welcome Solutions, and in these meetings we talk with professionals who share their career stories with us and teach us some life hacks. And today I have great pleasure to introduce Dr. Neha Gupta. She holds a PhD in data science awarded by the University of Warwick, Coventry, UK. Before pursuing her PhD program, she worked as an IT professional in a variety of software development and test management roles, building bespoke software for multinational companies across India and the UK, such as Bharti Telecom Group, LG Soft, Tioco, and Avon Cosmetics. In her PhD research, she applied data mining, geospatial analysis, and statistical big data techniques to understand sentiment behind the Twitter data. Her research work tries to uncover the behavioral traits of people as perceived through social media channels. Today, she works as a R&D Data Scientist at AGCO Corporation, Stoneleigh, UK, where she is applying her research experience and cutting-edge data science knowledge to evaluate business forecasting models to predict supply chain demand trends. And could you please tell us your story from your own perspective?
Yeah, thank you very much, Natalia, for having me on board. And it is really a pleasure. Yes, so I'm Neha Gupta, as Natalia just introduced. And I completed my master's in computer science back in India in 2003. From a central university in India, which is Gurukul Gandhi University. And after that, I was working in telecom companies in India, like Bharti Group, LG Soft India, working and developing bespoke telecom software solutions. My husband moved to UK and I joined him in his journey to the UK. And then I continued my career in telecom domain with AGCO in UK, again, in a test management role, building bespoke software. But coming from an academic background, my dad was a professor, and I was quite influenced by his personality and his knowledge in the way he conducted himself in life. And I always had this dream to do a doctorate degree at some point, particularly from abroad, maybe from a country like UK or US, to fulfill this dream. And kind of follow the lineage where I come from. So the moment I had my permanent residency sorted in the UK, I started looking for PhD roles within the UK. It was very, very challenging to secure a PhD position or a PhD, an admission to a doctorate school in the UK, because I didn't have that research experience. So just like anybody else, I Googled, I read people's blog on Quora, on findaphd.com, jobs.ac.uk to find out how to, apply for PhD positions, look for it, and then finally, if I can get an enrollment into a PhD program at a good university. So that was where I was coming from. So fortunately, I had a friend who used to work with me in Tioco, and she was a doctorate herself, and she did her PhD from UCL, University College London. So she introduced me to assistant professor in UCL, and then fixed up a meeting with her, because at this point I was literally all over the internet to find a position, admission, because my research proposal was definitely not up to the mark. It was pretty much the way I used to apply for jobs in industry. I was kind of following the same approach, but I think there was a flaw in my approach. So when I met this professor, the first question he said, well, why do you like to do a PhD? You are already working in industry, and there's no point when you are moving ahead in your career. You are already in a team leading role. You will be a manager in future. So I shared with him, well, this is completely a personal motivation I had, because I had a great influence of my dad on me, and also the kind of skills it brings. So I wanted to take a career break to do a PhD and experiment if I can pursue a academic career, and then what the PhD is like, just to have that experience. So he gave me few key words, like, he told me about, well, you can apply on these job portals like findaphd.com, but usually the transition, when people finish their masters in the UK or in US, they usually go for PhD. So mine was a quite unique journey, if you like, in that way. So he gave me a few keywords like Center of Doctorate Training, which was completely new to me. I was like, what's that? So he explained to me that the Center of Doctorate Training is basically a kind of a research group where universities secure funding for 4 or 5 years, and they prepare a cohort of scientist, if you like, but there is a slight training element involved in it, especially for the people who are transitioning into research roles. So he advised me that that could be one of the good option for you. So, and then again, back to Google, I looked for CDT positions, and fortunately there was a big funding secured by University of Warwick at that point. I applied for it, and I think my industry experience gave me an edge there, because there was a funding in place for 10 PhD students. I was the 11th one. Which when I applied, so I was in touch with the CDT administrator, Central of Doctorate Training Administrator, who was looking at the applications. And he said, well, we like, your profile, your experience, and your cover letter is really good. You seem really keen to do a PhD, but your research proposal, well, it's nowhere close to what we, give this esteemed funding to people. And I was like, okay, so what should I do? So he said, well, why don't you come and meet our head of the department and have a chat with them and see what we can do for you. So then I had a meeting fixed up with the head of the department at that time, Department of Computer Science. And fortunately, again, maybe universe was with me. He was very open-minded. He had worked in industry for a few years in US, and then he moved back to academia. So he kind of understood my passion and my urge to do it. And he somewhere, I think, saw few skills, but I was not able to translate it well on the paper, the way most of the researchers do. So he gave me some guidance that what are the things they expect to see in a research proposal, and just apply again. And I kind of followed what his advice was. And fortunately, I could secure a unfunded PhD position for the first year. And they said, based on my first year PhD report, they are going to reevaluate again. And then from second year onwards, there could be funding in place. So fortunately, my first year report was up to the mark, and then I got secured fully funded scholarship or PhD funding to do from University of Warwick, and the group was Smart Cities group, quite an interdisciplinary kind of a group. There were scientists, there were computer scientists there were people from management background who did their masters from management. There were also people from maths background, so it was very diverse kind of group. So I fitted quite well there because I had some applied skills and some computer science skills at the same time. And I got awarded my PhD in 2018. I submitted, and then obviously the degree got awarded in 2019. After that, I did a teaching at Warwick Business School. It was a short-term teaching contract at Warwick Business School, teaching big data analytics course. And currently, through LinkedIn, I got hired, and they forwarded my CV to a company called AGCO Corporation because they were building up a new data science arm. So it is currently a R&D data science role, which I'm involved with, wherein I'm trying to apply all the data science skills I've learned in my PhD in this new supply chain data science role. So that's what my introduction is, if that helps. Yeah.
Fantastic. Yeah. Thank you so much, Neha, for this introduction. It's a great story, and I really love the fact that you were not intimidated to step in and out of science. And I have a lot of questions about it. So first of all, my first question is, given that you were already building a career in industry, haven't you had that temptation to go for one of these industrial PhDs? Because I know that many companies these days, they offer their own PhD programs where you can stay in within the company. You can, in that sense, also have industry experience. So you have both industry experience and also academic experience at the same time. Plus, salaries are also accordingly higher often. So my question would be, why did you actually decide to do your PhD at the university?
Yeah, so the thing is, Natalia, two answers for that. I did find out, at that point when I started exploring my PhD, I was working for Avon Cosmetics, So at that time, I was working on a big marketing data set, if you like. So it would have been ideal if they supported my aspiration in that way. But what I figured out for an industrial PhD, the timeline for that PhD was going to be quite extended, because obviously it has to go on alongside my 9-to-5 corporate responsibilities, right? So when I explored that option, I figured out that it is going to be a part-time PhD, even though it is an industrial kind of a PhD. That was in my case, and it's going to last up to 6 to 7 years. So that is a big commitment. Already 3 to 4 years of PhD study itself is a commitment, especially the age I started. I started when I was 35, 36, my PhD. So I think I didn't want to commit myself for 7 or 8 years. That was first reason. The second one, there was this longing in me that I wanted to fully explore academia in in a UK setting or in a Europe setting, because I did my master's in India, and I never had an opportunity to go abroad and experience university life abroad. So it was an opportunity for me to understand how academia operate in European countries, but UK particularly, because I am in UK. And I think I don't regret that decision, that, taking a career break. It was a challenge for 1 year, because when I was not funded, so for the first year I had to pay my fees, and also I had to, live on my savings supported by my husband. But from the second year onwards, it was almost 1/3 of my salary. So it was good enough to pay the bills and support myself, and the fees was paid for. So I think from second year onwards, it was all right. But at first year, it was a challenge. And I kind of, even though it was a full-time PhD, but I managed to overlap 3 or 4 months, the starting 3-4 months of it with my job. So I reduced my working hours to 3 days, and then 2 days I used to go to university, even though it was a full-time PhD. But at that time, it was a transition phase, and it was a transition phase, and it was more of a literature review phase. So I could manage that for 3-4 months. So it was precisely 7-8 months, I would say, that I was without salary, if you like. And so these were the two reasons I wanted to do it full time, to have that full blown experience. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I understand that. That's also often a problem, that indeed some companies, they don't want to pay you extra for this PhD experience, so you have to kind of choose. I understand. Okay, and now my question would be, since Twitter becomes the big thing in academic community, and actually academic discussion often shifts to Twitter, then actually studying Twitter trends seems to be a dream topic for a PhD. So my question would be, what was your motivation to choose this topic? So did it happen to you just because it was it was a lucky coincidence, or perhaps you were interested in the sociology and all the this whole social media phenomenon around Twitter, or like, why did you choose this particular topic?
Yeah, well, obviously my PhD was in big data analytics, Natalia. So one of the sources of big data is social media. Instagram posts, because we are bombarded with ever generating data. We are the consumers ourselves of data, and we are the generators of data at the same time. So data is the new fuel, as they say. So I think primarily I was in a big data group, smart cities group. That was the main influencing factor because in my cohort, there were 3 or 4 people who were doing research on big data analytics, particularly social media data, Twitter and Facebook. And the second reason I would say I was interested in the behavioral science aspect of the of the big data, quite interdisciplinary. I didn't want it to go very much deep into machine learning route or pure maths, because I didn't have those skill set and I knew I would struggle. And I enjoyed, the psychology, as you mentioned, and the behavioral science aspect of it, how human behaves. So there was a lot of existing research, new research coming up using social media sources to monitor behavioral trends of people, and in particularly context of smart cities. So because it's ever generated data automatically, and there is this opportunity with researchers / scientists that we are in a position to mine this data and understand human threats as compared to the survey data, for which it takes months and years to collect that data. And this data is organically generated already. So obviously availability of data, the hype behind it, given the fact that I was in this group, it all contributed to make a choice in this group. And I think of that, these were the first 3 reasons, as I said, the big data hype, the availability of data, and my interest towards a behavioral science aspect. How do you monitor people's behavior in smart cities domain? These are the 3 things. And the third thing, there was this opportunity to collaborate also with the existing researchers in the group. So it was like, sharing knowledge, and there was this possibility to collaborate with one of the industry partner in my cohort, who was actually working on property data set. And the novel idea just came literally overnight, just penny just dropped in, that how about, if we can link the Twitter data with this property data set, which is where my novel contribution lies, to understand what's happening, in various industry domains. So basically my PhD is about understanding tweets which are coming from industry, and these industries, the way they are tagged are basically by looking at what property addresses they are at. So can we look at geotagged tweets to see, what sort of sentiment we are getting from different industry type. When I say different industry type, I mean, construction industry, real estate industry, financial industry. So obviously all these addresses or all these properties, they are at the back end tagged to some sort of SIC, standard industrial classification. And if we know what kind of industry type, and if we know the latitude, longitude of a tweet or a Twitter, then there is some sort of connection which we can establish, that this particular tweet was originated from this kind of a property. And is there a mechanism to kind of monitor the behavior of people belonging to a certain industry type? Mm-hmm. Think about, taking a survey of such people, going to different, kind of industry and collecting the sample. It will be a mammoth task. However, using social media, it's possible. So that's where, that's where the whole idea kind of
Actually, yeah. I have a private question about that, which is, I think in certain areas of industry and in general of society, Twitter is a major player that plays a role in terms of how the whole field is developing. So one example might be the blockchains, where like one influential figure with 100,000 or 1 million subscribers, followers on Twitter, actually solely can boost the price of a project by 50% by just even by giving like untrue information that's like rumor is good enough to really like disturb the whole industry. So like it's really, I mean, if you understand Twitter, then you understand society in some ways. And it's fascinating topic. And And I myself, actually, I don't know much about this research, but actually 2 years ago in March of 2019, I was a participant in some hackathon project in Warsaw. We were doing our own brain hack hackathon, the second edition back then, and I was just involved as a participant, and the project was about analyzing Twitter data. And I myself, I really, I was not a big contributor there, but I remember that Twitter actually is quite welcoming to research on Twitter. So they basically make APIs available, and you can get
Yes.
the website, and they encourage researchers to research their own platform. So I'm very curious, what types of information can you actually get? So how deep can your insights about the society become? So how much can you actually understand of the world and society from Twitter? So can you maybe share some interesting insights, like either yours or like from other researchers, something that we as people who don't do this type of research might never heard of, and that's really interesting when you think about society in general?
Yeah, I think there are the whole spectrum of topics, I mean, it's literally, we have literally scratched the surface, Natalia, at the moment, with social media data. And it is so dynamic. It is changing, ever so changing all the time. So I think as far as my research was concerned, so as I mentioned, I was looking at tweets coming from industry. So to answer your question, what kind of insights you can get from Twitter data. So particularly, obviously, the text of the Twitter, the text of the tweet, sorry, which is, whatever the person who is tweeting has shared, the text. Uh, you can extract the text, you can extract the handle, you can extract various hashtags, what they are following, whom they are following, whether it was retweeted. So this is all the textual related information. But what's also interesting is the geotagged element of it, which is the latitude and longitude. So if you have got the location services on your mobile phone, where you have installed the Twitter app and you have enabled it, then the place from where you are tweeting, that becomes visible as well. So that's very interesting. Imagine, if you go back to survey days, you can't keep on going chasing people, how they are feeling at a particular time, at a particular place in a city. For example, if they're in a London next to Big Ben. But with the tweet, what is happening, if they are linked with the Twitter and they have this geotagged element, latitude and longitude information, along with what they are feeling at that point, it'll be really an interesting that's why it'll be a really interesting study to analyze various moods, during the various weather type or during a political chaos, like Trump kind of a chaos is happening in US right now, and people are tweeting all the time. So you can generate really all sort of, really interesting insights from it. So it's mainly the one which I was exposed to, or I particularly worked, was the geotagged element, the latitude, longitude, and the text of the tweet, through which, using various NLP, natural language processing methods, you can allocate a sentiment to it, whether it is a positive tweet or a negative tweet or a neutral related tweet, looking at the words of the tweet. And then there is whole realm of body existing who are doing natural language processing, particularly on Twitter, topic modeling, looking at various word characteristics, how these word vectors match to each other. So mine was not too much NLP driven, natural language processing. I just analyzed sentiment. I didn't go further in depth to it. I just said, looking at the positive and the negative words and looking at some sort of lexicon or dictionaries, if you like, you compare these words and you allocate a sentiment to a tweet, whether it's a positive tweet or it's a negative tweet or it's a neutral tweet. And then I link that geotagged information, latitude and longitude, with the industry from where it is originating by using property maps. It was a geospatial as well as text analytics kind of a job involved in that. but to answer your question, you generally can generate a lot of behavioral trends currently. Like, for example, there are papers on people studying political chaos, chaotic kind of a situation, behavioral trends on financial ups and downs, when the stocks goes up and downs, and how people are following various handles on Twitter, whether that is influencing the stock going up and down, and then mood of the people in travel domain. In fact, there was the upcoming study if we can manage the travel patterns, although that was a failure, I would say. We were not able to manage it during the time of pandemic, but people are tweeting all the time from airports, for example, and how their experiences, which flights they are boarding. So you can really monitor travel trends on it. So there's all sort of huge spectrum of subject topic, anything related to behavioral studies and people's emotion as they share on tweet. Yeah.
I was actually going to also ask about the stock exchange, since from what I know, Google Trends is one of the predictors that many investment funds even use to make moves on the stock exchange. So do you think that Twitter sentiment can also be a viable source of information to make investment decisions?
Yeah, it could be, because I think I read one paper a while ago. Sorry, it's not fresh in my mind, but I think it was with regards to the Tesla stocks. That so the Tesla owner, he is quite active on Twitter. So depends, who the person, that influential person is. Jack Ma also, Alibaba owner. He was also quite active on Twitter at some point. So it really depends, how much fan following or how much following they have and how many people retweet it, what is their social media presence. But yes, Google Trend for sure. Warwick Business School itself, they have published few papers wherein they have used Google Trends to actually search Google keywords, keywords on Google to predict the stock market move. And there was a coverage on BBC News about it. So Google Trends is quite the one, basically behavioral trends of people as they search for these keywords. The investors or the people who are buying stocks on Google, and if that can be used to tell whether it's gonna go down or go up. Yeah.
Now I'd like to ask you one question that I think everyone who is watching this episode is now asking themselves, which is so how to build a following on Twitter. So what are the deepest, darkest secrets of Twitter that we should know to be more efficient users of Twitter?
Well, to be honest, I don't know the answer. I'm sorry, Natalia, because mainly you won't believe I don't have a lot of people following on Twitter. And I don't follow a lot of people too, apart from few conference groups and few government tags, if you like. Because mostly my job was to mine other people's data rather than me, following a lot of people or retweeting. My interest was always to extract data from Twitter by using these APIs. And also Twitter has got a commercial function as well, wherein they make data available for researchers. So if you want to purchase a data set, because one of the shortcomings with Twitter is when you mine free tweets, you only get, I think it was 1 or 10%, I can't remember exactly, of the freely available tweets in a day. So you don't have access to fully 100% sample of any particular handle or hashtag you are looking for. So you are only getting 1/10 or I think 1%. I clearly can't remember. Sorry, I didn't revise that. It was a couple of years ago. I mined last time. So what happens of those sample which you mine from Twitter, it's only, say for example, if you mine 100 tweets, it's only 10 of those tweets which are geotagged. If you're interested in just looking at hashtags or handles or text of the tweet, you're fine. But in my case, I was interested in the latitude and longitude information, which is the geotagging of the tweet. So I was able to get only 10% of my whole sample, which I mined, which was geotagged. So when I kind of joined them, in geospatially with my properties data in order to answer my question, it became even narrower. So I had to increase my data set. So I purchased a data set for 2 weeks, all geotagged from Twitter commercial arm. And there is an agreement which you have to sign, because obviously they kind of retain the user information because of security reasons. So the user information is not revealed, but what you will get is the text of the tweet, and then you will also get the geotag, the latitude, longitude. So you can actually comment upon a region in general rather than looking at the user characteristics. So you kind of zoom out a bit about a particular trend in a city. So that was my approach, because obviously you have to sign this agreement. You can't use user information. Facebook was in trouble because their user data was leaked. So I had to sign up that agreement. So I purchased 2 weeks of tweet, which was all geotagged. It was funded by my department, and that gave me a really, really rich data set. So there are 2 ways you can do it. That was using historic APIs. They have got a full Twitter developer page. You just follow what the guidelines there, and then you get in touch with there's an email ID provided, and they give you a script to mine that geotag tweets. So I finally ended up doing that because I wanted a bigger sample set, because my study was based in London, and it was looking at 2 weeks of data in 2016 and 2 weeks of data in 2012. Yeah.
Okay, great. And maybe let's come back to talking about your career, because this is the main of this channel. So I would like to ask you, since you first did the transition from industry to academia and then back to industry, I'd like to ask you which one of these transitions were harder for you, both logistically, but also like mentally?
I would say coming back from industry to academia when I did my PhD, that was a challenging one. That was definitely a challenging one, because you tell me to compare these two. Coming back to academia, I was coming back not for a job, but to do a PhD, but understanding the whole language of academia was completely new to me, to be honest, in terms of research, grants, how the REF things work, research excellence framework in the UK, why publication is so important, because I'll come back to that, why publication is so important question later. And I think, the way academia and industry work, because in industry, if you are writing a code or if you are developing a software which is good enough, does the job, keeps the customer and clients happy, you are done. But in research, you really get to the bottom of a question and you try to uncover as much as possible analysis, and you carry on doing it until the results are achieved, and data is less. However, in industry, you've got a lot of data, but you don't have time. You don't have that much of drive, or there's no as such requirement to really go to the depth of things to prove it until you are in a Google R&D lab, I believe. But I was in a typical corporate job where I was building bespoke software. So as long as the bugs are not there in the software, the customer is happy, the software works, that's fine. You can literally use a lot of APIs, but what those APIs are doing internally, you don't need to comment upon those equations. However, in academia, when you are writing a research paper or you are working on a piece of analysis, you really have to explain each and everything, how you have achieved this result, what this method was, from where you get this method, what is the reason behind it. So I think that was a big challenging transition. It was mentally as well as physically challenging, because I was not used to that kind of a work. And the second is, I think, the second is working in isolation as well. because in industry, you are working with a team. Yes, you have your day job, but it's in the interest of the whole team to make the project successful. However, in academia, as you are doing your own PhD or working towards a paper or a chapter in PhD, it's your baby. At the end of day, you are responsible for everything, right from writing to analysis, validating, and finally publishing. Yes, your supervisor is checking your work, but you are literally on the driving seat everywhere. So that was that was a big challenge, because I came from a team leading position. I had a team I was working with, so obviously a lot of tasks were shared. There was a documentation team working on it. However, here I was just this one-man army doing everything on my own. So that was really, really challenging. But yeah, so I think if you ask me between these two transitions, coming back from industry to academia was very challenging. Yeah.
Actually, yeah, I can feel for what you're saying, and I also had very individual. I had an individual PhD project, and I also experienced that isolation throughout my PhD. And it's very weird, because on one hand, you are among people, you have those contacts, you are in a group, you interact during lunch breaks, like you go out of your office every day a few times, and you go to conferences, and like seemingly you are in environment, but at the end of the day, you are the one responsible and for your own project, and it feels it feels so heavy on your mind. And I agree, and this is actually one of the main reasons why early career researchers leave academia. The isolation and feeling of lack of real teamwork, it's one of the main reasons, if not the biggest one, if not the most prevalent one. So I totally understand. But I also have to say that now, having a company, I can say that it helped in the long run. So if I didn't have
Yes.
that experience, I think now I would feel helpless, because that's exactly what you have to do once you start your own business. You have to do everything. Like you have to design the product yourself, do the work, but then also be your own marketeer, your own salesperson, your own advocate, your own tax advisor, your own web designer, like everything together. You have to do it all.
Absolutely. No, absolutely, Natalia. I can't agree more, because I think initially, as you asked, the challenge was there. And when you go through that journey, when you actually are making that journey, it looks really, really challenging and daunting experience. But once you come out of it, you literally come out of it with few skills, because what that challenge has done to you, it has strengthened your muscles in many ways. And these are all sort of muscles: your cognitive muscles, your perseverance, your surviving skills. So I think that's why at one point, I remember in third year of my PhD, I felt, that it's like I'm running my own business, I'm my own boss in many ways. And it is such a, valuable skill to have, in terms of, if you can deal with a lot of things single-handedly, then it's amazing how many people are able to do it. So I think that's eventually what comes out of it. Whilst you are in that journey, yes, it is daunting, it could be shattering many times. But once you are out of it, and once you have experienced it a couple of times, you learn coping mechanism. And then you kind of plan well, you set up your own deadlines. So in a way, you become your own boss and manage in many ways, which is an amazing skill to have, not just for your career, but even for life. You can deal with many things in a better way. Can't agree more, because I feel I became very much independent in my time management, in my work, because earlier when I used to work in industry, it used to be like 9 to 5 at the most. In the evenings, I'll check my mails, reply to my mails. But now, if for some reason, if I'm reading a scientific paper and if my work get delayed, I don't get tensed that much, because I know that I have got that skill, that I'll sit once, I'll give a final push and I'll get it done, because I know that I can do it within me, unaided. Earlier, it used to be, I remember, try to get the work done whilst the team is around. If you get stuck, what will happen? But now that fear is less, if I get stuck, I know I have ways to kind of manage it. I'm more confident, and that fear is less. And then if you can do a PhD, there's always a way. There is always a way. It's just that it requires a will, and you can search on internet, so you become very independent. I think I can't agree more, Natalia, on that. Yeah.
Okay, and let's talk a little bit about what you're doing today. And my first question would be, first of all, today you are back in industry. So you started from industry, then you went through academic experience, and you came back to industry. So does this experience of working in industry and being a data scientist now differs in any way from what you've experienced before? So did a PhD added something to your mindset and to your skills that make your job easier now or make your decisions easier now? So do you feel any difference doing your industry job today compared to what it was before your PhD?
Oh yes, 100%, 100%. I am completely a different person now. I have worked in industry before, my PhD for 10 years. And I used to think, I had a good length and breadth of experience. But until I did the PhD, I didn't realize I had so many personal gaps, which I need to address to. And the whole PhD journey has addressed to some of those gaps. I wouldn't say I'm not a complete human being after, even doing PhD, but it had addressed a lot of gaps, acknowledging that you can't provide a solution to everything, and that fear is less. The way I deal within the company, I'm more confident. I am more confident to say no. Earlier, when I would be saying no for any task, it'll be like, oh, it's end of the world. What will happen? Am I going to upset my boss? And what kind of knock-on impact it will have? But now, I think I'm very, very confident because science has given me that it's an ever evolving journey, be it in industry or academia, especially in analytical domain. You can't provide solution to most of the world problems or real problems, if they say, but you can do whatever you can do best in best of your knowledge. And I can say that with a lot of affirmation now, that affirmation was not there earlier. I have better time management skills. I think I'm a researcher because that 3 years of or 4 years of independent and working in isolation has made me a researcher. So if, like, for example, last week I was stuck in a code, I usually code in R, and I was like, oh, how is it going to work? I was trying to manage a loop, but I knew, there would be help available somewhere. I wrote a question on Stack Overflow. People replied there. I tried various things. And this experimentation and trying, these are all the skills which have come from PhD. Earlier I would do that, but there will be always this kind of fear, what happens if it doesn't happen. Right now, so much diverse skills I have got because I've done a teaching at Warwick Business School as well. So I know if I fail in this job, then there is definitely something out there for me where I can find a good job for myself, maybe in policy, maybe in, in education sector, even in school teaching, so it has left me enabled in many, many ways. So, there's a lot of self-affirmation and confidence and less fear and more going out there and experimenting, and the way you interact with your team as well, the way you bring forward your own ideas, because you get, your supervisor kind of challenges you a lot in many ways, and it's less challenging in industry, I would say, because I had one of my supervisor was very, ambitious. So you become more resilient in many ways. So I think it was an amazing, 3-4 years of experience, and I'm happy. I took a career break to experience it fully, but the way I work in industry now, it's definitely different and with confidence and self-affirmation. Yeah.
Actually, I also asked because I'm aware that some people treat a PhD from the very start as an army, as a period of time when you go to actually get your butt kicked, you know, to have that experience of hardship, and they do it on purpose and they do it consciously, not actually planning to become a, you know, tenure track researcher, but rather getting this school of life and then getting out of the PhD and out of the graduate school stronger and you know, more self-sufficient and as
And
a
I think, Natalia, something which I like to, sorry to interrupt you, but something which I'll have to mention. I think one another key skill which I gained out of PhD, very key skill, is the critical analysis. Because earlier I remember I used to bring in ideas, you know, in a group of people, you know, when I'm having team meetings and all. Maybe some people are naturally born, you know, with that critical analysis element, but I wasn't one of those. So PhD kind of, you know, taught me to you know, question everything. And why do I believe what you are saying? You know, just look at more, you know, 360-degree view, because not necessarily, you know, that is the end of the role. Just because somebody is senior in your team, or somebody has spent a number of years in an organization, doesn't kind of you know, state that you can't bring in new ideas or innovation. And as I mentioned earlier, you know, not having a fear to say it out loud. So that element of that critical analysis, yes, it just because it has existed for 10 years, or the way processes has worked, or just because it had it been that way for 5 years, doesn't mean it has to be like that in the future years also. So because you have seen the innovation side of it, because you have learned as part of the research journey how innovations are made, you know, how you do the literature review, you kind of challenge the existing methods, you undo the science and redo the science. I try to do the same things in industry now, which I don't think it will ever occur to me if I didn't do the PhD, because this naturally, this change is there. And not just in career life, but in life in general also. I keep telling to my son, you know, do you believe that author which you are reading? I don't believe him. So he is getting it as part of, you know, my journey also. So it's a keep questioning, you know, things which you see around and which you don't agree to, you know, you can always raise and your viewpoint, your idea, which earlier I wouldn't think about. Yeah.
fantastic. And if I can ask you now a little bit more about your current job, since R&D data scientist is one of the hot jobs today for PhD, and it's often an entry point to industry career. So could I ask you just a few questions about how your daily life looks like? So could you briefly summarize how your typical working week looks like in this job?
So my typical work week, obviously, it is a data science, you know, data scientist role. So in industry, I'm engaged with AGCO Corporation currently, and they recently opened their data science arm. So they've got this lot of supply chain data, and they have got a lot of forecasting methods in place, which you know, look at, so they have these proprietary softwares which look at existing demand, and they try to you know, forecast the demand in a better way for these supply chain parts where the team I'm in. So currently my day-to-day job is just looking at the data set and evaluating these forecasting methods, and if we can change various parameters, you know, in this forecasting methods to even plan better. Just looking at state-of-the-art methods, and also what are the new methods which are proposed by academia and in research in industry, you know, which are similar to ours, and could we better predict future trends so that, you know, our methods are most optimized, and it kind of are commercially viable in way, and does help us in doing better business. So that is one strand of it. So that is particularly the data science role, wherein I'm looking at existing data sets and writing up new forecasting methods. And the second one is obviously it's the BI related, business intelligence. So there's a lot of reporting, again, on the existing data within the organization and using Tableau dashboards for better business reporting. So that's more of a front end or KPI reporting, if you like, key performance indicators. So those are the two jobs which I'm currently doing day to day. Other things, obviously, it is also going through literature in journals and in conferences with what are the new methods coming up in forecasting domain, what are the new papers being published in supply chain business, following people on LinkedIn, so that if there are new ideas coming up, we can bring those ideas and incorporate in our practice. So I think that's primarily what my role has been so far. It is a very, very small team. We are just 2 and 3 people because it's just literally started last year, when they hired me. The plans are to grow further because obviously, given it is supply chain, they have got lot of data to analyze and analyze it in a more data science way and integrating a lot of data sets from diverse sources so that we are looking at more holistic picture, across the business. So that's what the role involves. Yeah.
Great. And do you have some long-term plans? So do you have some plan for your own development within your current workplace, or maybe some more general plan for yourself in a long perspective, or don't you think too much about the future?
Yeah, I think given, because now I've got academic experience as well. I taught in Warwick Business School for a short-term teaching contract. I quite enjoyed that teaching role. So currently, obviously, it is working in industry in this R&D role, but my ideal place would be if I can, work with industry as well as if I can get some opportunity to, do some sort of trainings within the company or even outside, as a freelancer somewhere, maybe over some weekend wherein I'm able to share, practitioner knowledge as well as my research, knowledge, which I've gained in past. And even I read a lot now. I think because I like that collaboration, I like that, knowledge sharing aspect of it. So it's always good to give it back, what you are learning, and you learn equally at the same time, when you're sharing. So I think that would be my ideal place wherein I'm able to, link myself up with some sort of training organization or even with academia, be given an opportunity to do some guest lectures maybe every now and then, because that will keep me hooked on the academic side as well as, industry, because I don't know whether I mentioned, because I like quite applied research, and this job gives me an opportunity to do a research, but in more applied way. I can straight away see what the result of my analysis is, in terms of the trends we are generating, rather than waiting for 5 or 6 months publication window and then waiting to hear back what a peer review is saying about your researchers. So I quite like applied research in this kind of a role. But I miss the teaching side of thing on university, because when I taught undergraduate students as part of my PhD and also soon after my PhD. So that was quite rewarding. That teaching experience was very, very rewarding. So I would like to kind of have a flavor of it every now and then, just to keep me going, because I enjoyed that aspect. So I think these are the 2 things I would like to carry on going forward. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure it will be possible sooner or later. There are so many options. So good luck. Of course, I wish you the best on your way. And do you also have any regrets? Is there anything that when you look back at your career so far, if you had a chance, you would do differently?
Well, I think for the data science, because I can say for data science PhD, I think I could have spent more time learning more of coding, if you like. Yeah. I mean, because in PhD, as I said, the biggest challenge which I face, because you are one-man army, as I mentioned earlier, you have to write also, you have to research also, you have to code also, you have to do the analysis, visualization, and then submit it in, journal. And then on top of that, you are trying to take some teaching experience also. So there was a lot of myriad of things you are doing in your PhD, although main emphasis on research. But I think I wish I could have spent more time doing some more hands-on coding, because of these other things. Sometimes there were a couple of months where I haven't touched the code at all, and because I'm writing the paper and revisiting it. And then for 2 months, you haven't actually looked in our code. So I think I would say, that is something, not regret, but that is something which I could have done better. So like, have a time aside if you want to have a career in a data scientist role going forward. Then coding is very important. The more you practice, the more hands-on you are, the better it will be for you when you are in industry. So it's being aware of either the tools. So I learned R, but a lot of people in my research group, they were also doing Python. I wish I would have spent another 6 months learning Python as well. So currently in my team here, we are using both R and Python. So it's good to have a couple of hats or a couple of tools available for you in data science, because the more you have, the better it is. No need to be an expert in all of them, but it's good to spend at least good 6 months knowing them and knowing the basics of it, at least 2 languages. That is definitely going to go a long way. That is what my key takeaway. I mean, I try to be more disciplined now, so I put my time aside now, to start learning Python as well as I am doing R. But I think I had a little bit of time during PhD, which I could have done it, but then I was exploring teaching side of thing. I was really fascinated by university side. So I think, yeah, it would have been nice if I kind of indulged myself a few months on it. Yeah.
Right. Actually, I feel for you for what you're saying, and this is interesting because when you ask this question to many PhDs, most of them would say, "Well, I could have spent more time on networking, or I could have spent more time on building my social skills." But I think I agree with you that it's also very good to know like what is your craft, and like have that
Yes.
one skill that is your technical skill, that is actually something like hard skill that you have, and you really like put it, learn it to perfection and make it your craft, so that everyone knows that you're the specialist, you're the best at this one thing. And even with one skill you can get very far if you really know how to use it in many contexts. And like
Yes.
for me personally, this is not coding. I learned the hard way already. Like I don't have natural skill for languages, including the programming languages. So I can always learn to a point where I'm decent, but I will never be the best. And for me, like what works best is writing. I can write all kinds of texts, and at some point I had to decide, okay, well, this is my craft. And if you have a craft, you have to keep on doing it. It just it's a muscle, and you have to keep on stretching this muscle all the time. So now I'm occupied with writing all kinds of things, from essays for my blog, through books, through some marketing materials for the company, all kinds of texts I can possibly find to write. Like I write, and I totally agree. This is something you should at some point do this self-observation and just figure out, okay, this is my craft, this is what I'm best at, and just keep on doing it until you are, it's not your personal best, but it's you are the best, in your community, and then that's what makes you a top professional in your field.
No, exactly, Natalia. I mean, you're 100% right. It's about knowing what the craft is. So with data science particularly, because I am in data science realm, the core skill is definitely coding in many ways. Yes, you have to be a storyteller, generate insights, which PhD gives you, collaborator, yes. But at the end of day, when it comes to analyzing data, coding is what will help you. Yes, there are a lot of packages available. So when people say programming and coding, it could be scary, but I think something viewers who are watching it, I would like to say, I have done C programming myself, when I started as a software developer back in 2004. But believe me, data science programming, it's not that daunting like a C programming technically could be, because there are a lot of APIs available, and it's very high level of programming, if you like, especially with R and Python. So it's just a matter of spending time on it, and you do actually get hang of it. So as a data scientist, one of the core skills is knowing either of these languages. There are other languages coming as well. Somewhere on LinkedIn, you can find, there is other flavors of Python and R coming, but R and Python are pretty much in these days for data science. Tableau, yes, for visualization, you can say. So as a data scientist, at the end of the day, even if you have to do storytelling, even if you have to do some collaborating, even if you are proposing a new idea, in order to produce a prototype, the very thing which is going to help you to produce that prototype is a coding. Is like, the skill. So that's very much center of it. And the more time you spend on it, the more comfortable you will be in applying it. So I think, and as you said, it's like a muscle, the more you do it, the less fear you will have about it, the more packages you would know. You have a GitHub kind of repository wherein all your code is sitting at one place, helps you in finding the job. Be very active on LinkedIn, have your LinkedIn profile up to date, because the first job which I got hired straight after PhD was through LinkedIn. I didn't even apply for it. And in there I had links to my projects in LinkedIn. And something which I found, just one ending note, Natalia, before we close this, I think it's the CV as well is very important, because as part of PhD, these were the tools which I learned in PhD. I didn't knew about it before. Earlier, my CV would be in a Word document, but now as part of the PhD, I don't know whether we used LaTeX here, LaTeX. Do you know LaTeX?
Yes,
so
yes.
now so there is this LaTeX got changed to, there's an online free version of LaTeX. What is it called?
Overleaf, maybe?
Overleaf, exactly. So thank you for that. Yeah. So Overleaf, they have got a lot of CV formats there. The CV templates are there. And when I update, so this was again that independent PhD skill. I picked up a lot of CV templates from Overleaf, and I saw some of them were industry type, some of them were academic style, and I had two CVs, one for academia for my teaching job, which I applied, and one was for industry. And each and every recruiter who shortlisted my CV, I got a lot of interview calls, and everyone was like, "Oh, your CV is amazing." So I think that's what PhD brings in. You learn what to highlight and what not to highlight. And these templates which are there on Overleaf, you can actually give an emphasis on the skill the people are looking for, and also translating your research skill into an industry mold. Yes, being independent, being innovative. These are all very much wanted skill in industry. Self-driving. It's just that speaking those skills in a language which they would understand and selling yourself. So that helped me a lot with those Overleaf CV template. I can't remember the name of the person who designed the template, but thank you to him. Give credit to him for his template. But that really helped to kind of shape my experience in 2-page CV format. And that's your first impression, literally. And then, rest is up to you how you perform in the interview or technical test. Yeah.
Right. Actually, this topic is also a bit controversial, so you can hear a few different versions in the industry about what is the perfect format for a resume, because also big companies like that are so huge that they get hundreds of applicants per every opening.
Yeah.
They often also pre-select resumes to read by a human, by running some software that is just filtering out information. And sometimes these PDFs rendered from LaTeX are not very handy to the software. So it's also it's very sometimes this can also prevent you from being hired, unfortunately. So actually, if you can submit a nice looking CV that also has like editable form, that's perfect. Like in my case, when I was applying for jobs, I used to, if I had a choice and I could choose to send 2 files, I was always choosing the nicely looking version that is like overleaf version, for instance. But I was also submitting simple text, the same, like the text version of the same resume, just because I was never sure if they are using the software or not. So I wanted also make it convenient for them. So it's just a little remark from me that if you are applying for international corporation, then often this is the case that they use the software. So it would be good to also append your application with this simplified, like very, very simple text format of your resume. But anyways, that was just an off-topic remark. But I believe like offers amazing templates. I was also using them, so I totally agree with that. Okay, and
I think one more thing, Natalia, I think, and another thing with PhDs is specifically, never undermine your skills, because what has happened, another thing which I would like to share from my personal experience, I think I appeared for an interview at one place, and you won't believe, I went, I hope you allow a little bit of time because it's a really interesting story. So I appeared for an interview. The position was applied for, a data science manager role. Okay, so I applied for it and I thought, okay, fine, why I'm applying for a data science manager role? Because I thought I got good data science exposure during the PhD, little bit of consultancy I did alongside PhD because I worked for HSBC part-time and had some experience in UCAS and had some industry experience before PhD also. So I thought, okay, fine, why not apply for data science manager role? I do understand. And lot of times you learn on the job as well. They took me, the interview went on for 3 hours. I was supposed to, give a presentation to them on what new I can bring, what ideas I can bring with the data set which they shared. And you won't believe, I worked for that presentation for almost 2 or 3 days to prepare that presentation, to give that, a good holistic view of it, 360 degree, so I basically applied most of my research skills, and the kind of data sets and how you can integrate various data sets, geospatial data, social media data with this company internal data, so that, you can have these, because it was a consumer facing industry. So obviously a lot of social media could be used in that. So I did that. And the presentation went on for good 3-4 hours with a lunch break in between. And the director who was hiring me, he was like, taken aback. And he was like, wow, these are some good ideas, because in industry when they are working, I think that was, and also it was 100 years old company. So I think they didn't have a lot of innovation in place. So a lot of the data sets which I was talking about, it was completely new to them. So I bring in a lot of things. Unfortunately, that position got filled by an internal employee. So the HR communicates to me that this position is being filled up by an internal employee, but director is really keen to have you. So we would like to call you again for another interview. And they created a new role called senior data scientist for me. Yeah. So that was really, so at that point I was like really high, wow, this is what PhD is giving you, you are being taken by industry in a real positive way. And they have created a new position for you because they think you are the right candidate. But what happened on the flip side though, when I appeared for the second role, the guy who was interviewing me was this newly posted data science manager. Now, he was this traditional, guy who has been working in industry from last 20 years, maybe knows a lot about his industry, but had a very limited experience on the new data sets or new methodologies or innovation which is happening in data science domain. So he was asking me all sort of question, and one of the questions he asked was, how long would you like to stay in the role? And I said, well, in a senior data scientist role, maybe a couple of years, and then I like to move on. So by move on, I meant that, be promoted. I think that would be the obvious answer. Who would like to be in a role for 2 years? Then you want to look for some career progression. And then he took a note of it. And then I get a feedback from HR saying that the person has communicated that she doesn't want to stay with the company for more than 2 years. So that's why we are not selecting her. And I was like, there was this completely contrast of opinion of somebody who is of wisdom, like the director guy who created a position within the same organization, and somebody who was newly promoted to this position. But I believe my hunch says me that he got intimidated by the fact that somebody new is coming in their team who can challenge their own situation, because obviously at the end of the day, he will be my reporting manager. So people are protective about their own jobs as well, and which is fine, which is a human angle, but I would like to share that experience, because so don't, at that point you think, well, you did a PhD to kind of upskill yourself, get a more length and breadth of experience. But sometimes that can, if that's not the right job for you, or if that's not the right environment for you where you can grow, then let it go. I was upset for a while, but now I am in a team. My team is amazing. The director whom I report to, he's very, very nice leader. He's very forward looking. So you do get all sort of people in industry, who can be a little bit protective about their jobs, and they might find it challenging if somebody really with full aspiration is coming in with a lot of new ideas. But at the same time, there are people who want to grow their organization. So never take it on yourself. You have not done anything wrong to do a PhD, and it's a good skills you are bringing in, valuable skills, but you get all sort of people. So I really wanted to share this episode, because it was, and the whole interview process and the selection process and the mails with the HR went on for 2 months. So there was a lot of communication, them creating position for me, they creating, and then in the back end, there were other interviews happening. I was doing the teaching at Warwick Business School. So perseverance, but then, at these are the times when you have self-doubt coming in, but I think at the end, if you have full trust in yourself and, in your own knowledge, definitely there is a place for you, people who value that, and you will definitely be, getting there at one time. Eventually you will land there So that was quite an interesting episode, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, cool story, really. Yeah, well, that's yeah, I get it. Sometimes, and if you, especially if you apply for to a large company where a person who is interviewing you is not the decisional person, because they're not shareholders, they are not the owners, they are just HR department employees who are not even specialists in the subject matter, just people who have a list of like a list of requirements for who is our dream employee for this particular position and what's the profile, and they try to fit you to the profile and figure out if you match the expectations, and that's it. They basically compare the two and they try to find someone who fits best to the profile they have. So if you encounter people like this, it's likely that your value or your ideas would not be rewarded the way they should be. So that's also why for PhDs, especially if you have some very specific skills or like bright personality, something, you're thinking out of the box. In those cases, usually for PhDs, it's more advisable to go to startups and get hired there, because a person who will be interviewing you for a job is usually a founder himself or herself, or a shareholder, someone who is decisional and who has the company interest on their mind primarily. So if they see potential in you, even if you don't fit the profile they created before the interview, they would likely change their mind because they see the opportunity. Whereas if you go to a corporation, that, you know, what they assess is how well you fit the expectation, and that they don't want to bet and they don't want to gamble on the candidate. So if you actually exceed the expectation, sometimes it goes against you, unfortunately. But a great story. Okay, so lastly, do you have any other general advice for PhDs that you would like to share? Like some, you know, some life hack or some general tip that you would be willing to broadcast to our audience?
I think, as I mentioned, Natalia, in my case, you know, because I didn't come with that research background, I left my master's a while ago when I commenced my PhD journey. Collaboration was good, a key to, my success in PhD. So at one point, there was this dearth in data and, ideas also not coming along. But just because I was part of the CDT group, I collaborated with my peers, and I came to know about that his industry partners is sharing the data set, and then I can purchase the data from Twitter. It's just like sometimes it is an isolated journey, but I had that skill from industry because I used to work in a team environment. I employed that skill in my PhD, and that collaboration showed a path forward because you are actually making a path for yourself. So even though it is an independent journey, it's always good to talk to people, network within your own research peer group, because it is in everybody's interest. If you work on a paper, yes, you are going to be the first author on the paper. If they can be a co-author, then it's a win-win for both of you. So, and it kind of moves your research forward. So that was, one advice I would say, that be open to talk about it. Listen to YouTube's video. There are times, when you are emotionally very low, but then you are not alone in this journey. Everybody goes through the same feelings, especially if they are doing PhD, similar feelings, if you like. And the third one is, like, if you are aiming for a data science PhD, coding is a key skill to have. You have to start with at least good hands-on coding role in, even if you become a data scientist in R&D. So for good 2-3 years, then only you could be in a leading position later on. But first you have to try it hands-on yourself. So if you are aiming for a technical data scientist role, then coding is a skill required. Good to have an exposure of 1 or 2 language at a comfortable level, have a GitHub account, and that will help them in their journey. Yeah. So, and good luck, keep smiling. It's all worth it. When you are in the journey, when you don't see light at the end of tunnel, you feel, oh my God, where you are stuck. But eventually you will feel that it was worth it. It was definitely worth it in my case. Yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Neha. And thank you so much for joining us today and for sharing your story and your invaluable insights on Twitter and whereabouts and careers post-PhD and your new job as a data scientist. Thank you for everything, and you guys who who successfully reached the end of this episode with us. Thank you so much for watching, and if you would like to get more of this type of content, then please subscribe to this channel, and of course share your comments and questions with us. We'll be happy to take them on board and answer every question. Thank you so much, and have a nice day.